Hey y'all, this is Sam, and in this chapter we're actually going to load the software into your Arduino Mega chip. This is going to take a couple steps and I'll walk you through them. They're easy enough and they are also documented in the documentation for the Arduino control unit. So the outline of what we're going to do is we're going to first download the IDE for programming and loading to an Arduino. We're going to download an extra library for running a web server on the Ethernet shield of the Arduino. And then we're going to download my source code from my website, hortodomi.com or outerbabylon.com. And we're going to load that software into the IDE and compile it and upload it to the Arduino. Alright, so we can go ahead and get started. The documentation has all the URLs for downloading these things, so you can pretty much go to the documentation and figure out what's going on as far as where to get all this stuff. This is the download page of the Arduino. So this is going to be the Arduino IDE, the integrated development environment. It's for all OSs. You got your lesser OSs right here, and then you have Linux right here. I'm on 64-bit, and so we're going to go ahead and click on that. And we're going to save this back, and then we can open that up, and I'm just going to drop it on the desktop right here. And I'm using Linux Mint 14, by the way. It's based off Ubuntu, which is based off Debian, so lots of my stuff is Linux oriented. You can find comparable ways to do everything in other OSs, but this is pretty generic Linux setup. Okay, so I've unzipped or extracted the Arduino IDE to my desktop. You can put that anywhere. If it's for more permanent work, you're gonna work on other things with Arduino or play around with it for an extended period of time, you may want to put it in your home folder or in My Documents on Windows or wherever, so it can be stored back. And so I'm just going to leave mine on my desktop. And so what you get with the Arduino IDE, it's pretty simple. This is the actual IDE script that runs an executable in the background and opens the IDE. Here's your libraries directory. These are all the external libraries. External libraries can be added in order to give your compiler more functionality. We're actually going to add a library to this folder for what's called the Webduino, which is a Arduino implemented web server that runs pretty well. So we're going to add a library to this folder, and also we're going to make a folder right here. Arduino programs are written in a language that's either very similar to C, or it's a subset of C, or something like that, and they're called sketches. And so this is going to be your sketchbook folder. We're going to create this folder right here, and then when we start our IDE, it's going to want to know where we want to save all of our code, and so we're going to point it towards this sketchbook folder that has all of our code in it. And in a little bit, since this is empty, we're going to go to my website and download the source code for the Arduino control unit, and we're going to drop it in here and then load it up in the IDE and compile it and upload it to the Arduino. So this is kind of the IDE and what's going on with it. There's some other stuff in here, some interesting examples for Arduino type stuff. This is really cool stuff to play around with in here, playing around with sensors, display, analog reading of sensors. This is basic stuff. I think it's turning on LEDs. This is how to run digital ports. Interesting stuff. And so yeah, that's the general structure of how they set up the IDE. When you run this IDE in a little bit, we'll need to plug in the Arduino and via USB, and the IDE will need access to that USB port in order to talk to the Arduino. I don't know exactly why this is or what all goes on with it, but in Linux, and there's probably something similar in Windows, in Linux you have to add your username to a group called dialout in order to give programs that you run as your user access to USB resources in the way that the Arduino is going to need in order to talk to this IDE. So long story short, you can either add yourself to the dial out group, or you can sudo run this script, because you will run it as root, and root is in the dial out group. But for the most part, you can add yourself to the dial out group pretty easily. You want to just sudo user mod add to group dial out, and then put your username right here pretty much. So sudo run user mod add to group dial out this person. You want to do that for yourself, whatever your username is, and you can figure out who you are by doing that. That's me, Dershmerl. And so you want to do that, add yourself to the dial out group, and then actually reset your computer, or you may just be able to log out and come back in, but you want those groups to take effect. And so I think you want to reset your computer for the most part at this point. And so go ahead and reset, and then we'll start the rest of the process. So now that you have added yourself to the dial out group, or decided just to sudo run the IDE, we can move on, and you've reset your computer. So you're in that group now. So the next thing that we'll want to do is go and download the Arduino library and put it in this libraries folder. So what I'm going to do is go to the Arduino site. The current one that they have going down here is Arduino 1.7, and so you can click on that and save it. Shouldn't take too long to download, and then you can open that up. This is the archive manager showing what it will look like extracted. So we're actually going to go create a folder called Arduino, and then we're going to drag this stuff into it. Boom. So now we've added Arduino capabilities, Arduino 1.7, into this IDE when we run it. The next thing that we'll want to do is go to my web page. Somewhere down here you'll see loading the Arduino software. You go into there. Here's this video right here, and then you want to click on this and then save that. That'll be really quick download too. And then go into that, and this will be the code that you downloaded. It'll be in this zip folder, but you want to extract it out. And of course that, like we talked about earlier, want to drag that into your sketchbook. So now your sketchbook has some code in it right here from my project, and this may also be named something different into the future. This specific one that I just downloaded is the prototype 2.0 code. We're a little bit further than that now. Okay, so you got your sketch lined up. You're in the dial out group, so you can talk via the USB. You have your library set up to do Arduino. So now we have everything we need, and we can actually run the IDE. It'll pop up a little terminal window, because this is actually a script that runs in here that runs something else. Kind of weird setup. I don't know why they do that, but so this is the Arduino IDE. There's a couple of things we'll want to do first. First, you will want to go in and make sure in your preferences that you are pointing towards the right place for your sketchbook. So under preferences, you'll go to sketchbook location, and then right here it has home Dershmerl desktop Arduino 104. That's where I want it to be, and then I'll point it towards my sketchbook folder. And there's the actual Arduino right there, the code that we downloaded. So so there we go. We set our sketchbook up, and that's going to be good. That means that when we go to the sketchbook setup right here, or drop down, you'll see your sketchbook's code and the Arduino code in there. Okay, so at this point you're ready to actually attach your Arduino Mega board, and there's a couple of things that we'll need to do for that. First of all, you'll want to take the USB cable, plug it into the Arduino Mega, and then you'll want to plug it into a USB port. Then you'll actually want to go and select the board right here. Mine's already selected to Mega 2650, but it may be one of these other things or default to the Uno. So you want to make sure it's the Mega 2650, and then you'll also want to go in and select the proper serial port. This serial port option is grayed out if you do not have access to the dial-out group. That's why we added you to the dial-out group earlier. But you'll know if there's problems with that because this will be gray. If you have problems even after you add yourself to the dial-out group, sometimes this serial port thing can stick gray and be confusing in order to figure out where this thing is on the USB bus, and this thing will be gray. One thing you can do is actually just go on the command line and sudo run this IDE right here, sudo run this guy, and then you'll have access, and this was more likely to not be gray. But anyways, hopefully adding yourself to the dial-out group worked. And so you come down here, mine only has one attached, so of course that's going to be it. And then so now you're lined up and the IDE is ready to talk to the actual Arduino. Okay, so at this point you'll actually be able to bring the code up and compile it and upload it into your Mega. The way that we'll do that is you go to the sketchbook that we've aligned, you open your code, it will open in another window, and you can click verify to make sure the code compiles. If you have a problem right here, then you want to make sure that all the steps were properly done before this, mainly the step where you're adding the Webduino code, because if the Webduino code's not in the libraries folder properly, that's where this thing may hiccup because it can't find something, it can't find the server implementation or something like that. I forget what it says. But anyways, that compiled properly and didn't have any problems, and so this upload button right here will also recompile, re-verify, and then upload to the Arduino if it's attached. So we got the compile going on right there, and now it's actually uploading to the Arduino, and it is now done uploading. Sometimes there's some weird business in this IDE. It's not always perfect when you're selecting the board, when you're selecting this port, and when you're compiling. And so if sometimes you'll reach problems that really aren't very explainable. And so if you have bad problems with it, you can pretty much close the IDE and just restart it and go through the board selection, serial port selection, loading, and compiling again, and it'll usually work the second time. See, like this, something weird happened. Okay, so the code should be uploaded, compiled as a binary, and put into the EPROM on the Arduino. So now you can go through and plug in an Ethernet cable to it and do REST calls via either your own interface or the sample controller that we have at hortodomi.com or outerbabylon.com. And hopefully this helps you out in uploading code to an Arduino, and hopefully this helps you get your smart garden running if that's what you're doing with it. As always, the documentation is the final say on best practices for all of this type of stuff. So if you have any questions, make sure and follow the documentation well, because the documentation will be updated and the videos will not. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you.